Long ago and far away, in enchanted lands across the seas, lived kings and queens, princes and princesses, good fairies and wicked witches, ferocious giants and gentle dwarfs. Their adventures and stories have been told for hundreds of years. Open the pages and listen to the words, and you too can join the magical world of Once Upon a Time.
Cinderella. Once upon a time there was a sad young girl. She was sad because her mother had died and her father had married a cruel, bad-tempered woman. Her wicked stepmother was very jealous of her husband's young daughter because she was a very beautiful girl with the sweetest, kindest nature you could ever imagine. But life was soon to change for the sweet young girl. Just one day after her stepmother married her father, she started to show what a wicked woman she was. She knew that everyone was very fond of her stepdaughter, and she couldn't bear it. It made her own two daughters seem even worse than they were, and most people thought they were horrible anyway. In no time at all, the stepmother was having cross words with her stepdaughter, and she ordered her to do housework day and night to keep her out of the way. She also banished her to the attic room, where she had to sleep on a rough straw bed, while her stepsisters slept on the softest mattresses. Her stepmother gave her so many chores that it was usually well past midnight before she'd finished them all. And when she'd finished, she used to go into the chimney corner and sit among the ashes and cinders. Because of this, the eldest of the wicked stepsisters called her Cinders, while the youngest, who was not quite as cruel, called her Cinderella. Many days passed without event, and Cinderella got used to her life of drudgery, until one day the king's messenger delivered an invitation to 2 summer balls. This invitation threw Cinderella's stepsisters into a frenzy of excitement.
"We've been invited to the palace!"
they both screeched as they waved the invitation under Cinderella's nose. For several weeks, the 2 wicked sisters talked non-stop about the clothes they would wear.
"Oh, well, I can't wear that blue. I need new shoes."
Until, at last, the day of the first ball came, and they finally made their minds up.
"I will wear the pink dress with the lace trimming,"
said the youngest.
"And I will wear my special gown stitched with golden flowers,"
said the eldest. Kind-hearted Cinderella helped the lazy pair by ironing their ball gowns and helping them to get dressed. When they were ready, Cinderella cheerfully waved goodbye to them. But as soon as they were out of sight, she sat down in a dark corner of the room and wept. Then, as if by magic, the corner was filled with light, and Cinderella's Fairy Godmother appeared. "Why are you crying?" she said. For a few moments, Cinderella couldn't speak to her because she was sobbing so much. And when she finally stopped sobbing, she said, I wish I could go to the ball." "You will go to the ball," said her godmother. "But how?" said Cinderella. "I don't have any clothes to wear, or—" "Hush," said her godmother. "Everything will be all right. But I need a little help from you. Now, let me think. I yes. First, I need a pumpkin. Could you fetch me one from the garden? Cinderella couldn't understand why she wanted a pumpkin, but she trusted her fairy godmother, so she raced into the garden to fetch the largest, ripest pumpkin she could find. Her godmother scooped out the insides of it, leaving nothing but the skin, and then she tapped it with her magic wand. At the touch of her wand, it turned into a glittering golden coach. The coach was so dazzling that Cinderella had to shield her eyes when she looked at it. Next, her godmother went to look at the mousetrap, where she found 6 little mice who were all alive. She tapped each mouse with her wand, and as she did this, each one turned into a beautiful horse with a sleek grey coat. "Now we need a coachman," her godmother said, and as she said this, she noticed a rat scuttling along the floor. And there he is. She tapped the rat with her wand. Straight away, the little creature turned into a handsome coachman. "We're almost ready. All that we need now are 6 footmen. Please, go into the garden and find me 6 lizards." So Cinderella did as she was told and fetched 6 lizards who were hiding behind the watering can in the garden. As soon as she gave these to her godmother, she turned them into 6 footmen, all dressed in the finest red, green and gold livery. The fairy godmother then turned to Cinderella and said, "Your carriage awaits you." "It's the finest carriage I've ever seen," said Cinderella, "but I can't go as I am, dressed in these rags." So her fairy godmother touched her with her wand, and straight away her rags disappeared, and she was dressed in the most beautiful gown of lace and satin, and on her feet were a pair of glass slippers. Cinderella then stepped gracefully into the coach, but before her godmother ordered the coachman to set off, she said this to Cinderella: "You must promise me that you will leave before midnight. If you stay just 1 second more, the coach will become a pumpkin again, the horses will turn back into mice, and the coachman will become a rat, the footman lizards, and your clothes rags." "I promise I will leave before midnight," said Cinderella. And then the fairy godmother ordered the coachman to drive off. The king's son had heard that a princess was coming from a faraway land, so when Cinderella arrived in her glittering coach, he dashed out to greet her. "Allow me." He took her hand as she stepped down from the coach and led her into the great ballroom. All the chatter stopped. Everybody stopped dancing, and all the musicians put down their instruments. Everybody wanted to look at the beautiful girl, and the only words that echoed round the room were, "Who is she? She looks like a princess." Then the king commanded his musicians to play, and the prince danced with Cinderella. She waltzed across the floor as beautifully as a swan glides on a lake. Even her ugly stepsisters couldn't keep their eyes off her, although they didn't realize who she was. But Cinderella recognized them, and she was so polite that she went over to them and shared special sweetmeats with them. flew by, and soon the clock struck 11:45. Cinderella knew it was time to leave, so she leapt out of her chair and dashed out of the palace. As soon as she arrived home, the clock struck 12. And just as her godmother had promised, the coach turned into a pumpkin, the horses turned into mice, the coachman became a rat, and the footman became lizards. Once again, Cinderella was dressed in rags. Her godmother was waiting for her at home, and when Cinderella saw her, she said, "What a wonderful evening I've had! How I wish I could go to the next ball and see the prince again." Then she heard her stepsisters turning the key in the latch, so her godmother disappeared. "You've been away for such a long time," said Cinderella.
That's because we've been enjoying ourselves so much,
Snapped the eldest stepsister.
Yes, we met a beautiful princess,
Said the youngest.
who wore the most exquisite gown.
The eldest butted in.
But nobody knew her name or where she was from.
Cinderella didn't show any interest in what they said, and they presumed she was just jealous. The next evening, when the ugly sisters were at the king's second ball, the fairy godmother visited Cinderella. And once again she granted her wish and let her go to the ball in a pumpkin that she turned into a golden coach. This time, the prince never left her side. He was determined not to let her run away again. Cinderella was enjoying herself so much that she didn't realize what the time was, and she almost forgot her godmother's warning. When she glanced at the clock and saw that it was about to strike 12, she sped down the stairs. As the clock struck 12, the king's son ran after Cinderella, but she was too quick for him. Desperate to find her, the prince ran into the palace gardens and asked one of his guards if he'd seen a beautiful princess. "Only one girl has left the palace gates tonight, and she was dressed in rags," was the guard's reply. The prince clutched the glass slipper that Cinderella had left behind as she fled down the stairs. "Whoever this slipper fits will be my wife," he said. When the two cruel stepsisters returned from the ball, Cinderella asked, "Was the beautiful princess there again?"
Yes,
they said.
but on the stroke of 12 she fled so quickly that she left one of her glass slippers behind, and the prince kept it. He was so heartbroken when she left that he declared his love for the girl with the glass slippers.
The next day, the king sent out a proclamation. He declared that his son would marry the girl whose foot fitted into the glass slipper. 3 courtiers carried the slipper throughout the land on a velvet cushion. "Oh, this is our last hope," said one of the courtiers when they arrived at Cinderella's house. "The princess must live here." When the eldest stepsister saw the slipper, she snatched it off the cushion and started squeezing her large, gnarled foot into it.
Oh, I'm sure I can get it on.
She grunted and groaned as she tried to squeeze her foot into it, but it was no use. The slipper was far too small and delicate for her clumsy feet. The youngest sister tried squeezing her feet into the slipper too,
I can, just a minute. Just a minute.
but it didn't fit. "Please, let me try the slipper on," said Cinderella.
Cinders.
Her stepsisters burst out laughing when they heard this.
What, you?
But the courtier said, "The king has given permission for every girl in the land to try on the slipper, so you may try it on." He picked up the slipper and slid it onto her foot. "It's a perfect fit," he cried. Her two stepsisters cried out,
"This cannot be!" "Oh, never!"
and they ran around the room, ranting and raving. Then, to their amazement, Cinderella pulled the other glass slipper out of her pocket. Once again, her godmother appeared. She touched Cinderella with her wand, and her rags turned into a beautiful gown. It all became clear to her two stepsisters. Cinderella was the lovely princess who had danced with the prince at the ball. Cinderella then went to the palace to meet her prince again, and a few days later they were married. And on the night of the wedding, the king held the grandest ball that had ever been held in his kingdom. "May I have the pleasure of this first dance?" said the prince as the music began. So Cinderella took his arm, and they danced the night away.